Have you ever hit a moment where success wasn't enough? Where the weight of your past, the scars no one sees, or the doubts you don't dare to voice keep you from breaking through to the life you know you're capable? Maybe you've achieved things others only dream of. Maybe deep down, there's still something holding you back, something you can't quite name, yet it's there, shadowing your every step forward. If that strikes you at a chord, take a breath. You have just found your people. You're not alone. Welcome to That Shit Does Not Define You, Stories of Hope. I'm Athena Captain, joined by my co-host, Jada Haycraft, and this isn't just another podcast. This is a space to strip away labels, shame, and the invisible barriers that have held you back.
With each podcast, we will bring you raw, unfiltered stories of resilience, real people who have defied the odds to rewrite their narratives and give you the strategies, systems, and tools to do the same. This isn't theory, it's lived experience. It's practical, it's powerful, and it's personal. Whether you're ready to claw your way out of rock bottom or shatter the invisible ceiling standing between you and your highest potential, this podcast is your roadmap to rise. Your next breakthrough starts here. Let's get started. It's time to rewrite your narrative.
What if you believed everything that anyone has ever told you? That you weren't smart enough, you're not good enough? Has that happened to you? I know with me, the trauma in my life, I have been told a lot of things about myself that I learned later were not true. Things that stopped me from achieving, things that honestly stopped me from loving myself. Are you guys in that same boat? Have you felt that way? Well, today we're going to talk about how that shit doesn't define you, right? And I'm so excited because we're going to learn what is our true potential and how do we make those voices stop. So Jada, who do we have on today?
This week, we have Ashley Napier. We are so excited to have her on. With a decade of leadership experience in healthcare and insurance, she empowers individuals, teams, and organizations to thrive. Ashley has held the key leadership roles, including COO and principal in independent insurance agencies, and now serves as an executive advisor at Solomon Strategic Advisors and director of organizational leadership at Riggs and Associates Insurance. So we cannot wait to embark on this journey with you today. Ashley, welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Well, I would love to give the audience a little bit of the background. So you guys, I have known Ashley for a while, and she's one of those deep souls. So she is authentic, honest, has a beautiful story, has accomplished so much in her life, and she's also excessively humble. So you wouldn't know how much she's achieved because she doesn't stake her flag to let the whole world know. She has really quiet resilience. And so I'm really excited to have her share her story. And I hope you're inspired as I am. Now, if you're on the treadmill right now, or if you're in your car on a walk, remember, you want to save this because you're going to want to take notes to some of her answers. And remember, we're going to have the rubber meets the road later. So you're going to want to take some notes there too. So, but without further ado, Ashley, first of all, can you give just a slight overview? I know we gave your bio, but tell us a little bit, if Snidmit here, tell us your life story.
I love this question. Thank you. I feel like when I meet people, when I tell them about me, they're like, whoa, I never expected that. And while we do not have enough time for me to get into the, whoa, I never expected that, I'll give you just like the highlights. So I was born in Oklahoma, raised in Kansas and Texas. I had a traditional family, mom, dad, brother, sister. We were close. We loved each other. We didn't like each other, but there was like a whole lot of connection, a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of love. When I was 15, I think it was 15, my parents separated, and that really turned my world upside down. It created quite a bit of instability in my life. And at that time, my parents went to 2 different locations. I didn't follow for a little while. I dropped out of high school and chose to get a GED and decided to go work. And I worked until I eventually landed at a healthcare company, an eye care company. And that was one of the things that really like changed the trajectory of my life. But I was there for about 8 years, and I worked for one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. He taught me about people, he taught me about caring for others, he taught me how to lead, he taught me about business. Um, but with the championing of my family and my coworkers and the guy that I worked with, I enrolled in college. And I didn't enroll in college because I was a high school dropout. And I thought that I wasn't smart. I thought that I wasn't good enough. I had really low self-esteem. And my family and my boss, they just believed in me so much. And so I enrolled and I worked at it. And I started at the very basics, like remedial classes. Um, and I continued to work on my undergraduate degree until I um, graduated with a master's. Now, the last two, oh, sorry, until I graduated with a bachelor's. And I took 2 years off and I completed my bachelor degree. And I stopped working for that leader around that time. And I remember him telling me, you can do anything. Now, my parents had said this, my family had said it, but for whatever reason, it didn't register. And I remember him telling me, you could do anything, Ashley. Like, I am so confident in you. And that, coupled with the support of my family, just like catapulted me, just really launched me. And so whenever I re-entered the workforce, so I took about 2 years off to finish my undergrad. When I re-entered the workforce, I started selling insurance. I was an insurance producer. And then I made my way into a leadership role. So I was a chief operating officer, and I enrolled in a master's program for organizational leadership, completed that in, I think it was 2021. So I started in during COVID, and like no better time spent during COVID than to earn a master's degree. And I'm still in the insurance industry, but instead of working on insurance policies, I work in leadership. And then I also work outside of the insurance industry in leadership as well. So like teaching, coaching, um, facilitating, digging, doing whatever I can to like help people discover their true leadership voice.
I
So
love
that's
that.
where we are today.
I love it. I love it. I love that it in your story you go from the world would say a dropout to a master's degree and extreme leadership, and now teaching other people to be a leader. But let me ask you some questions. Can you take us back to a pivotal moment in your life when you realized the story you were living wasn't yours or wasn't your truth?
I sat here and I thought about this, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, gosh, I have so many examples of this, and I still pick them up today. But the one that I picked out was sometime when I was working for that eye doctor and in college, I realized that I wasn't dumb. Like, I thought that I was. I thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought that I was not smart. And I realized that I just had some unfortunate circumstances. Like, life just got really hard, and I made the best choices that I could with the information that I had. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't set me up to be super proud of my choices. Ultimately, like, they helped create who I was, but I wasn't what I figured out was like, I'm not dumb. And I and like that is, it's so simple and it was so profound.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. It's interesting that where do you think that came from? The dumb. Did you self put that label on you because of the GED, or was that assigned to you by somebody else earlier on?
Man, it wasn't assigned to me by anyone else. It was my own doing. It was, I wasn't really ever interested in school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I liked it and I did okay, but I was more concerned about the people in school, my friends, the teachers. But I think it was because, yeah, like I wasn't smart enough to finish.
Hmm.
And at the time, that's what I thought. Looking back now, it was the circumstances around it. But because I had a GED, I hid that. I didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
I grew up somewhere else. I grew up in Southwest Kansas. Then I moved to Corpus Christi, Texas, and I finally landed in Oklahoma City. People didn't know me. I didn't grow up here. And so I didn't have to tell them. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't start telling them until I completed my bachelor's degree. It was like, hey,
Wow.
now that I can prove I'm smart enough, I'll start revealing this.
Hmm.
And I would love to say that it was, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but I wish that it was like a one-time process. It was multiple years of like scales falling off.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Thank you for that honesty. I know there's people out there right now that life circumstances made it to where they are not college educated. And I got to believe you're not the only person. I will say, just being honest, I don't have a college education. And yet I own multiple businesses, and I would, by the world standards, I'm successful. But, Ashley, I struggle with that talk behind the ear that you can't be that, I struggle consistently about you're not smart enough because you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting where I think people have expectations. You've got to do this in order to be intellectually smart. And that's not true.
Yeah.
That is not true. So I do think that there's a place for education. I wish I had it. I think I would be a better writer. I think my critical thinking skills could have developed sooner. However, it doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent. I
Yeah,
will
that's
say it
right.
does mean sometimes I have to hire people to do things I'm not good at, but that's okay.
Me too.
I think, hey, even college educated, we still, there are things I'm
Yeah.
not good at, Athena.
And my husband and I had a conversation about this the other day, and I said, education, it to me is the desire to learn. It doesn't have to be formal. For me, it was, but it doesn't have to be formal. Being educated means being open to learning new things.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's really critical. And I don't care if you're college educated, you need to continually be learning. It's not like check the box, right, and done. But let's go a little bit deeper in your story because I want people to hear this. What were some of the labels or narratives from your past that held you back? And how did you begin to challenge those? Explain that to us so those listening that have that voice that keeps telling them the garbage, how do they start to challenge that thought?
Yeah. So some of the labels that I had was I was not smart enough,
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't worthy, that people didn't like me,
Mm-hmm.
that um, I was fragile, that I wasn't good enough. I mean, it was pretty nasty inside of my head. And what I figured out that it wasn't that I was dumb, it was hard circumstance. But
Mm-hmm.
like I started to rewrite that as I'm actually not those things, but I am unique and I do
Mm-hmm.
learn differently. And I really brought that vulnerability to community.
Mm.
And I started asking questions. Whenever you first did the intro, you said something really nice to me about me. And I was like, man, this is so nice to hear what it's like to be on the other side of me. I don't know what it's like to be on
Mm.
the other side of me. And so when I started to ask, like, how do you experience me? It wasn't always nice and it wasn't always kind, but it was truthful and I could do something with it. But for the most part, I found a lot of like kindness
Mhm.
and hope. And I brought my insecurities and my vulnerabilities to community. And the people that didn't break the things inside of me, helped mend it, and it was transformational. Now I had to educate myself. I had to know what was going on. Like I needed some education just for me. That's just how I learn.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to know like what was going on inside of my head, and I needed words for what I was feeling. But when I started to bring that to community is whenever healthy community,
Yeah.
healthy community is when things started to rewrite and change. And that's what I would tell people. It's like,
Wow. I want to make sure that the listeners hear this. And what you're saying, if I rephrase this, tell me if I'm right, is your ability to be vulnerable in a safe place allowed you to start to see the areas where, I'm going to be bold here, you are lying to yourself, which then in turn were limiting you.
yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And so vulnerability is scary, but it's essential to growth. And I know if you're listening right now, Brene Brown is an expert at vulnerability. Read any of her. I get anything I can read from her. I do, but it is essential to growth. You know, this facade that we put on of vibrato. I always say that arrogance and pride are married, and confidence and humility are married. And it is that humility and vulnerability that you grow. And that's exactly what you just said. And which is interesting because what I said at the beginning is your quiet strength and resilience and your humility, which you have, which it just shows. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for that picture. It's scary though to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
right?
It takes courage.
Mm.
I've sat with a lot of leaders and they're like, vulnerability, that sounds like, oh, like barf, right? I hate it. And I said, what if we start reframing this to like little bits of courage, of sharing something that could potentially skew how people think of you? And I remember sitting in the seat and saying the things that felt very vulnerable, that took a lot of courage to say, sweating. Athena, I remember meeting you for the first time and like sitting in front of you and asking you questions and just like had a guard up. And then I remember at some point, like I stepped into a little bit of courage. I thought your name is power, right? Like your name is powerful. And I was like, if she sees any flaws in me, she's not going to like me. And so I remember just like letting that wall down and sharing things with you. And it was acts of courage because I had built you into this like Oprah Winfrey of my life, right? And I took little steps of courage and you met it with such grace that it was like, I'm sitting there sweating, like really nervous. If she sees me, she may not like me. And I tried it anyway. And it was met with warmth and grace and love and care and kindness.
Thank you. That's my heart. That is my heart. So I'm glad that happened. I'm now I don't know what to say. I'm all flustered. I don't take compliments well. So I got to work on that. Jada will tell you that. So will my husband. But all right. So go
Definitely.
to deeper in your story here. How did you refrain the pain and the mistakes from your past and use those as strength and growth? Because that takes. I mean, let's be honest. That's an easy question. That's a harder do.
Yeah. So, how do I reframe it? I have been working on this since, my whole life, but like concerted effort since 2014. And what I know is that this is a process and it will never stop.
Amen.
I will always be in process and I will always learn and I will always grow, and that's just who I am. But what I would tell people is that's what you asked me. Yes. It's like, What
How
would
do you
I
reframe
tell?
it?
Okay.
How do you
How would
take
I
the
reframe
pain
it?
and disappointment or decisions you've made or other people have made for you and turn them into strength and resiliency?
I talk about like resilience, and I'm not really sure where it comes from. Like I'd probably need to like, for me, I need to study it. What does it come from? Because I don't know if it's created. I think that it is people outside of, I borrowed it for a while. For me,
Yeah.
I borrowed liberation. And
Mm,
so I had external people rooting for me and championing for me. And I could continue on until it became implicit and like wired inside of me.
mm,
But I had to borrow it. But I would say like I had to bring it out of me, whatever this turmoil, these lies. I had to expose it. I had to bring truth to it, and I had to ask people on the other side of me, what do you see? And I had to accept what they said, ugly or beautiful, and I had to sit with it, and I had to give it time, and I had to educate it. I know that a lot of things that float around in my mind were very emotional, and I had to bring it over to the logical side.
that's
I had to
good.
give myself evidence of whether it was true or not. And I
Mm,
had to have people speak that back into me. I remember there was times where people would speak truth into me, and I would say things like, "Can I record this? Because I'm not going to absorb it." Like
wow.
I physically need to record this so I can listen to it later, because I'm in my head right now. I'm in my feels. I'm really was what I was in my amygdala, my fight, flight, or freeze, right? I'm just in the
Mhm.
freeze state. And I needed to record it and play it back. But when I remember whenever I first started this like, self-development journey, it was like I wanted to be fixed immediately. Like I've read the books. Hello, I've read all Brene Brown. I have shown a light like in every crevice of me that I knew of at the time. And I was like, all right, like I should be fixed by now. I should be whole. I have arrived. And I didn't realize that like this is a process and it will never end. And I was frustrated with that in the beginning, and now I just love it. It's like, oh, well there's something new about me.
Now, do
And
you?
so I think I would tell people like grace and truth, like
Mm,
grace, truth, and time.
you've said this a couple of times. I want to pull this out of the interview that you asked other people. So again, going back to that vulnerability, but you asked people how they see you. What made you do that bold step?
I didn't see me. What I felt inside and what I could hear from my family were there were two different things.
Mm,
And I was like, my family's they're just saying nice things about me because they're my family. I've got a really good family. And so I started to take that outside of my family and into community outside of them, and asking things that I didn't feel were true about me. I was telling myself something different than how people saw me. I mean, it was like a monster on the inside and something lovely and beautiful on the outside.
mm,
And the reason that I started to take that out is because there was so many incongruencies that I was hearing that it was like, what am I missing? What am I missing? Why am I so mean to me and they're so kind? Like, what am I missing? And so I needed to, I don't know exactly what. It was maybe a book, a podcast, somebody else doing it. I have no idea. Probably like my sales classes in college, like got me into asking questions. And I think I just got brave enough. But it was I did it because there was an incongruency. And I was curious at this point. What am I
mm.
missing?
Wow, I have to tell you, as your friend, I'm so thankful you did that. I'm thankful that you had the bravery to do that, that whatever led to you to do that. Hearing you, even knowing your story, hearing the emotion in your voice about how you saw yourself internally versus what truth was on the outside breaks my heart. I mean, for those who admire you, respect you, care about you, that is heartbreaking. But I wonder how many people listening right now are just like that, right? The narratives they're telling themselves on the inside is nothing what the people on the exterior see. I think, I'm not to be uber sad here, but I think about the suicide rate currently. And I just, as somebody who's had two very close people to me commit suicide in the last 10 years, I know if they could have been brave enough to hear and get the visual, do what you did, that maybe they would be here. And so I want to take this one step further, because this is really good. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and being honest. I just know there are people listening that can identify and are living the same way that you used to. But what steps? Okay, I'm all about practicality. So what steps do you take to create a new narrative, and how do you stay committed to the challenge? Because you've said a number of times, this is a long haul. Like, this is not one and done. So what do we do? How do we do it?
I think I would say the steps. This is idealistic, and I know that what I'm about to say does not work for everyone, but if I could just be idealistic for a second, the steps that I would say to take is to enlist the help of a professional, coach, counselor, and take a step and revisit the past. Inform the past. We are so good at sitting in the current and going back to the past and rewriting narratives that may not be true. And so, like, bringing reality in light and clarity to the past is the first step. Figuring out who you are based off of where you came from and where you are now is the next step. Who am I? What do I like? What do I dislike? What opinions do I have? How do I view myself? How do others view me? Where am I at today? Where do I want to go? That is the next step. So, like, hiring somebody, getting clear on where you came from and figuring out where you are, and then invite community into that. Now, I think that it's helpful to have someone like a counselor or a coach to help you in that process. But I know that, like, sometimes that can be financially prohibitive. Find a nonprofit that does it. But if you can, start there. Like, that's that. The thing is like, to start this journey feels so overwhelming that I don't want to have, like, more than a few steps, because it's like, let's revisit that past and let's figure out what's going on today. But the first step is like finding somebody that you trust, that you, outside of your family and friends, like a unbiased perspective to help shed light on the past, and then help you understand how you currently show up.
I love that. Again, you have to be vulnerable and have to seek people out, which I think is really important. So thank you for that. And I'm going to push back. I don't think that's very idyllic. I think that's excessively practical.
Okay.
I will tell you, just being a coach consultant, this is a true story. It's almost a joke, but it's not a joke, because these are humans. No one, male or female, doesn't have a good cry session, right? Even when we're talking about developing systems and growing business and doing that type of thing, it doesn't matter. We're humans. And so every facet of who we are bleeds into our personal and professional life. And so it has to be unpacked, because without unpacking, it's making us make choices unconsciously that affect us. And so I agree with you. It's in those who have the ability to do coaching, you and I and coaches like us are able to unpack that, which leads me to the next question, because now you have gone on this journey and now you are a consultant and a coach. And so now you help other leaders rewrite their stories. So what are some of the common patterns or barriers that you see, and how do people break through? Talking, and I love that you have taken your own experience now and are helping other people. So explain some patterns, barriers, and breakthroughs.
Okay. So I think about like when I'm sitting on the other side of the table,
Yeah.
what I see people do is they want a quick fix. They
Yeah.
don't want to go back and revisit the past. Like, why in the world does that have anything to do with this leadership? I don't want to talk about my childhood because I don't understand how it informs my past. Now, I could get real nerdy and go into like attachment theory and self development and like trauma and growth and learning. I won't, but I will say that a lot of your past informs who you are today. It is a component of how you show up today. So they don't want to go back because it's confusing, it's
Mm-hmm.
painful,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's boring, and it doesn't shed a whole lot of light in their eyes. But when they start talking about it, then we can like start making connections. So they don't want to visit the past, or they try to do it alone.
That, yeah, you can't.
You can't.
You cannot.
You could. Okay, fair enough. You could. However, you're not going to get the growth that you desire, that other people see in you, that you need to lead yourself well and lead others well. You're not going to get it if you don't bring it to reality. If you do not bring yourself to reality, I don't see it possible. I thought I could do it actually. And the reason that I'm so emphatic about it is because I tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy that sat me down as a coach, and he said, Ashley, he was one of my coaches. Ashley, I think you need to talk to somebody. And I was like, I am. Like, I'm talking to me in my journal and my husband. And I didn't know that it actually, I needed more than that.
Yeah.
They ignore or neglect or stick their head in the sand. They're like, well, it is what it is. I'm me. I'm not going to change. Or they don't give themselves grace or truth. A lot of actually, that's not fair. A lot of people bring truth, which is like harsh realities, but they don't give themselves grace or time. And so I
Yeah.
see that as a hindrance in leadership development. But I think that people should reach out for help from a professional. I think that they should give themselves time. I think that they should say those vulnerable things modulated. I have had people, and I have done this, vulnerability dumped on people. And then it's like their wall self preservation goes
Right.
up because I was too vulnerable too fast. Like I need to learn how to give a little bit, not too much, or, don't withhold it, but it has to be
Mm-hmm.
appropriately modulated. And then find support and truth from healthy people, and then educate themselves. Now, I didn't understand what healthy meant. I, I had to start figuring that out and making a list. And what I found is that I can pull from different people. Oh, I like the way Jim Rohn says about this. And I like the way that my neighbor talks about this. And I like the way that my old boss used to think about these things. And I would collect these little nuggets from different people and bring education and information and truth to it. But I had to define what healthy was to me.
Yeah. I think that I'm so glad you brought that up. It is, your tribe matters. And I have experienced your tribe changes as you develop and grow. And I think some of that's organic and natural. I used to, I don't know, it used to be a point of contention for me because I was like, oh, I like to not lose friends. But
Yeah.
sometimes, it makes me sad, but I'm like, it's okay that there are relationships for a season. And I struggled with that. And the reason what you were just saying is I had to come to terms with that as I consistently was pushing the bar. And sometimes that can make other people uncomfortable, or sometimes where you're pushing yourself, the intellectual conversations you need to have, the healthy level increases. And you have to surround yourself and make sure that you're getting words of wisdom from people that are healthy and they're doing their own work, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, that is a lot harder, ladies, than it sounds. Um, and although I will say I still care about those other people and I have them, as acquaintances, but they're not that inner tribe. They're not the people that I'm seeking to help me take my own development to the next level. So thank you so much for sharing that. It just made me think about that. Have you experienced that where I'll call it a leveling up, but it really is just a new season. Have you had that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that what I believed is that I should keep a friend for life.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember the BFF for life? Like, you take half a
Yes.
heart, I take half a heart.
Yes.
And then when we get together, we have a full heart. Like, so without you, I only have half a heart, but I didn't. I think that was a ill-informed construct that we should keep friends forever. I think that we need friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that people have lifelong friends. And I have friends that I went to second grade with that I don't really talk to as much, but I love them.
Mm-hmm.
But I have learned that sometimes I need something else for a season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how long that season is. And what I also have learned is that I need to have closure with some of those friends because it can get emotional and it can get confusing. And so an actual practice of saying goodbye, not necessarily to them, but to the idea of them. It's in my journal. It's, I'm practicing it. This is silly, but I practice it to an empty chair, is saying goodbye and thanking them for that time that they gave me and that space that they filled, because they did do something to me and they taught me something. They helped me in a way. They filled my cup in a certain way, and being grateful for that and honoring that in that time, but saying goodbye to that portion and allowing myself to be open and receptive to the next person that is going to speak to me. What I have experienced is I have love to give and I want to give that to others. And I need to be the best person that I can be in order to do that. And sometimes I just need to borrow some things from other people and I need them in my life. And I can only, as much as I would love to love everyone and be friends with everyone, I only have so much capacity and space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely, I understand that very much so. More so right now in my current situation in life than ever. But okay, so I do have a question for you because this comes up a lot when I'm speaking or coaching or even on the podcast. The definition of success, man, it's different for everybody. I wish everybody would understand it is not something that is standard. But how do you define success compared to before?
Okay, so before I used to think success was money.
Yeah.
Big house. What was it? What was his name? Robin
Leach?
Yes. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Yes. Oh, I watched that. I was Poe. So I watched that show every time it came on.
Yeah, dream big. And then there was one on MTV. It was Cribs or something. I don't remember.
Oh, yes. I didn't watch that one, but my husband did.
Okay. But I thought success was having cars, money, taking vacations, private jets. I thought that it was frankly that. And I am so glad that I have a new definition, because success to me is healthy, is being firm in who I am, is knowing who I am. It's loving. It is being like loving recklessly. It is showing up and being present. It's knowing myself. It is knowing others. It's being resilient. Like that to me, I do have to have money. I have to, right? I have to eat. I have to keep this house over my head. I have to have those things. But success to me is like me knowing others, me showing up for me showing up for others. It is learning and growing and developing. I could probably,
I love
the
that.
list is just super long, but we get the idea.
Well, because let's just be frank too. Everything you just described cannot be taken away. Right? And that's my fear. I, like you, I define success. Matter of fact, as I started to become successful, and I've shared this on this podcast, boy, I planted the flag. I had, I made sure that everybody knew I had arrived. I, I'm. It's empty. We did a whole a podcast on that. What I love is everything you described cannot be taken away. It's innate. It's you have it. No matter what is going on around you or in the world or even your career, right? You still have the ability to understand your identity and have success. I think that's really important for our listeners to hear. There is a way that you can have every bit of success that cannot be taken away from you. And I think that's important for people, because I see a lot of people when they lose that, whatever it was that defined them as success, right? They lose themselves. And that's detrimental to your growth, to your prosperity, everything. But all right, you and I like to laugh. You're a very serious, intelligent friend, but you have a great sense of humor. So, what label or belief you once held that you laugh out now, that you're like, oh my gosh, that is so far?
Yeah, this is not funny, but it is that I'm not smart. Like I laugh at that now. I'm not
Yeah.
smart. Like that's silly. You know what I have learned is that the smarter I get, the more dumb I realize I am. It's like I know. My grandma and my dad used to tell me, like, when you get older, you realize how much you don't know. And like when you're young, you think you know everything. And it's so silly to me and funny to me that like I don't know so much, and I'm okay with that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I really am. I'm smart and I'm capable of learning, but the like label smart that I put on myself, I'm not that. I'm not smart, but I'm curious and I'm wise and I have got good counsel and I don't know everything.
Which is a
Even though when I
really,
was 17, I thought I did.
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I kind of knew Jada when she was that age, and she certainly thought she knew it all.
Oh,
Listen,
know?
I have a 16 and an 18-year-old, and I am the dumbest person in the world. The dumbest. I don't even know how I got to like dress myself today. I'm so dumb in their eyes.
Jada, do you think you're a lot smarter than you were at 17 now?
Do I? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Oh, Lord, yes. At 17, I thought I knew everything. That's for sure.
It's all of us do. Oh my goodness. All of us do. It's awesome. All right, Ashley, as we wrap up this, gosh, it's been fun. I've loved this. The listeners today, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just started realizing this story has been written for them and they need to change it? Where do they even begin?
Okay, I've got a little step and a big step. So big step is like reach out for help from someone who has made the journey themselves
Mhm.
Interview them. Like,
Yes.
right? Make the journey yourself. Do not take the journey with somebody who has never climbed Mount Everest. You want somebody
Mhm.
who has climbed Mount Everest. Little step is pick up a book and get curious. Like, pick up a Brene Brown book. Start answering some questions in it.
Well, that very simple, but extremely powerful. And by the way, I have a new relationship with a colonel in the National Guard who teaches resiliency in the military. And she has given me 2 books that she says is the beginning of what she would classify as the beginning of my education to really go deep. I will share those with you. I know.
I'm going to read them.
Yes. Nerds ignite. That's what I'm just saying. You know, some of us are nerdy. I'm a nerd. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I get it. I had a briefcase in high school. It's okay. I have all these books in my office, and people ask me, have you read them all? Yes. These are just the ones I want to read again. You know,
Probably the
so
ones you've already read twice too.
some of them are. So
I
anyway,
love it.
my dream life is to have a home office that's 4 times the one I currently have. That's all books. But anyway, thank you so much, Ashley.
You need a couch and I need a pass. Unlimited pass to
Please.
your home library.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I do have to say this because this shows you the depth of my nerdiness. And the audience, hopefully you can laugh about this. 5 years ago, I decided it was time to clean out my home office, which has lots of bookshelves. This is a true story. I gave over 600 books away. I had so many books that I called and said, who will take these books? And what I found is the prison ministry would take all my paperback books, and I ended up giving them like over 400 books. And then the other ones I gave to retirement homes. But that's what I'm talking about. So now Jada got me smart. And every time I go through books that I don't want to keep, I go to half price bookstore and they give you like $1.50. You guys, I went in the last month, I got $72. Those are just the books I was donating. So, you know, hey, it's okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Not bad for a dyslexic person, you know. I love to read. So
You do.
anyway, all right, Jada, give us some facts and figures because I think it's important that we unpack some science. And my friend Ashley here is very into science. She did not share that part of her brain, but she has an extremely scientific, logical brain. So she'll probably enjoy the facts and figures too. So let's give them to him.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, I do want to say something you mentioned about you didn't quote Brene Brown for this, but based on what we've discussed, I assume that you probably listened to the same podcast that I listened to. But you just, at the very beginning, you mentioned that at the time, whenever you were 15, you were doing, looking back, you were doing the best with the resources that you had and the knowledge that you had at the time. And although those weren't choices that you look back and were like super proud of, they were the best decision you could have made at the time. And so I just wanted to reemphasize that because that is something that I've listened to Brene Brown talk on is, we may not super like applaud ourselves a year down the road, but if we're doing the best we have with the resources we have at the time, like we are doing the best we can at the time. And so I think just also believing the best in others in that. And I know this really isn't about other people right now, but Brene goes into their podcast talking about, how you basically just living life with that thought of, Athena is doing the best she has with the resources she has at the time. Ashley is doing the best she has with the resources she has at the time. And Jada is doing the best she has with the resources she has at the time. And so I just think that mindset is super powerful in itself. And so just kind of wanted to hone in on that for a second before I went into the facts and figures.
Love
but just
it.
want to say, yeah, so there we go. But the facts and figures, so I have 3 main things I wanted to point out. The power of self-narratives, and there's a key study by Dr. Dan McAdams. He's a leading researcher in narrative psychology, and he found that people who construct positive self-narratives focused on growth and overcoming challenges are more resilient and happier.
That doesn't seem so shocking.
It does not.
I'm glad that they needed to have a study for that just to prove it.
Just to prove it.
Just to prove it. But that does
Listen,
seem.
we need science.
We
We
do.
do need science. We actually do need science, which is why we add it in here, because it's important.
Absolutely. The second one was the stories others write for us. So, really, what the science says there is studies show that the labels others assign us, especially in childhood, can profoundly shape our self identity. And research and development psychology from 2009 found that children internalize parental expectations, often carrying these beliefs into adulthood, regardless of their accuracy. Um,
Mm.
and then the third is the role of cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT. CBT is one of the most widely used therapeutic approaches, focusing on identifying and challenging negative thought patterns and replacing them with healthier ones. A key study on that was from 2012, the meta analysis, goodness, I can't talk today, in the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that CBT is highly effective for reframing harmful beliefs and reducing symptoms of anxiety and depression. So that is all the facts and figures I have for you guys today. Athena, I know you have some rubber meets the road
You
for our
know I do.
listeners, so I'll kick it back over.
I do. I will say this though, because Ashley brought this up in her interview too. The cognitive behavioral therapy is you will get that from a licensed therapist. And that's your best. There are some self tools, but if you're listening to that, that is really where somebody helps you reframe very powerful. Um, we're going to just say labels that have been attached to you. Me being a 10 out of 10 on the ACE scale and the amount of a trauma that I've lived through, there were labels assigned to my soul, I'll say, that I could not have gotten through those on my own without therapy and my faith. So some of them are really rooted deep. And that is an extremely powerful scientific tool to help you get through it. So even though that's the facts and figures and we kind of laugh about science, you guys, that is extremely powerful. It could change your life. So I want you guys to really digest that. I've certainly utilized that as a resource. But as you guys know, we want to give you some rubber meets the road. And that is, yes, we want to educate you. Yes, we want to have good stories. We want to tell you science, but we also want to give you the resources. What do you do now? So why is it important? First of all, you need to identify the current story you're living. Ashley said that. You got to start there. What are you saying to yourself? What is your narrative? How do you do that? Sit down with a journal. Someday, Jado, you and I are just going to have an Athena journal, and we're just going to have to sell it because we talk about journaling so much. But sit down, and these are 3 questions I want you to ask yourself when you're journaling. What do I believe about who I am? What do I believe about who I am? What do I believe about what I deserve? Think about that. What do I believe about what I deserve? Third, where did these beliefs come from? That one right there, take a minute to digest that one. If you've lived through any type of trauma in life, and we all have, it's all on a different spectrum, right? But we all have. Start asking yourself, where did these beliefs come from? And then maybe if you are brave enough, you'll take that to somebody and show it to them, somebody healthy, and allow them then to tell you if there's truth in there or if there are opportunities for you to see a different picture. Okay. So that's a very practical thing for you to do. Getting going here to change your narrative. Number 2, rewrite a key moment in your story. So take one key moment and reframe it. I'll tell you why I say just one. Because once you learn how to do it with one, you can repeat it. But you got to start with one. So how do you do that? You choose one pivotal experience in your life that you know has shaped you. And then you sit down and you ask yourself, what did I learn from this? And how has this made me stronger? How has it made me weaker? Ask yourself about it. And then how is this impacting me? And what can I do differently? Do I want to believe it? Is it not truth? Etc. So really think about that, because once you start to learn to do that, you can repeat it over and over again. But you got to start with one. I also, just from life experience, don't start with your most traumatic. Start with something smaller. And then I think, honestly, once you learn that, you'll understand how much you need help to unpack some of the other ones, but it's a good place to start. Another one is create a new narrative. I love this because I always say every human being is a book. I already told you I'm a nerd in books, but I believe everybody's a book. And we get to write our own book, right? We get to write our own book. And I always tell people, we're privileged if we get to read somebody else's book, right? We're honored if we get to be written in somebody's book. But what we're never allowed to do is to be arrogant to think we get to write somebody's book, right? We're not allowed to do that, but we are allowed to write our own books. And so how do we do that? You're journaling, and I want you to think about that. Who am I becoming? Who am I becoming, right? Who do I want to become? And what does my best self look like? Ashley's best self, Jada's best self, and mine are all going to look different. Let's hope so. The world doesn't need mannequins, right? They need us uniquely, who we are, why we were created, all the beautiful things. So what's the best self of you look like? And then how will I act? What will I think? What do I even wear? Where do I live? Start allowing yourself to ask yourself these questions, because don't let society or life or anybody else tell you what your narrative has to be. You get one life. Jada and I say it every time we do this podcast. This is not your practice life. You get one life. What are you doing with it? Take your life serious. Take every day serious. And then last rubber meets the road here is take one action aligned with your news story. So you got your news story, then ask yourself, what's one thing this month, this week, this day that I can do to help myself be my best self? Those are baby steps. Again, Jada will have that in the Cliff Notes for you guys. But this is one way to take this information and go down the road and start living right? So I'm so excited. Thank you again so much, Ashley, for being here. I adore you. I'm so proud of you. My life is very full, so I don't get to see a lot of people, but I stalk you on social media, and I've been watching your growth. And there's a number of people that I respect a lot that, because of my daughter's situation and my careers, I don't get to go out much, but I just watch them and I'm cheering. I need to, Jada, you know what I need to do is I need to create a group of people that know that I'm cheering for them, like, hey, just let I'm your fan. You just, anything.
Athena's fan club, but instead of we're your fan, you're our fan.
Exactly. These are the people I believe in. Like, I
The
believe
feeling's
in.
mutual.
By the way, Jada's gonna tell you all how to get connected. I really am a fan of Ashley's, and so if you do need leadership development, if you want help, if you don't want to do this alone, I know Jada's going to give you some information on how to connect with her. She could be an enormous asset for you guys to make that step. So Jada, how do we get connected with Ashley?
Well, definitely. I'm going to kick it over to Ashley to tell you.
Yay!
Ashley, how do we get connected with you? And don't worry, I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. That way you don't have to spell anything out if it's an email or that thing. But would you tell our listeners how they can get connected with you?
Perfect. You can go to theashleynapier.com. Now, I feel like I have a big head with that. Ashleynapier.com was purchased. So I am now theashleynapier.com. You can go to Solomon. You can go to solomonsa.com. That's our company website. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest and best place. As this podcast is going out today, I am the one in the purple dress, but the link will be in the comments. But Ashley Napier, MAOL on LinkedIn. So any of those three places you can find me.
I love it.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that all that's in the show notes. I also am going to link Brene Brown's website in the show notes because we discussed her quite a bit today. So I feel like that might be helpful for some of our listeners. Aside from that, if you enjoyed this podcast, we would just love to ask you to like and subscribe so you can join us next week. You can find us just about anywhere. If you want to find us on other streaming platforms or social media, just search Athena Captain and you are bound to find us. And As a final note, we do want to leave you with something serious and remind you that this is not your practice life. So don't wait for perfect. Start messy, start scared, just start, because nothing changes until you do. So take one step today toward the life you want and dare to share it with us. We'll be here standing with you every step of the way. Can't wait to see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.